Hello and welcome to another episode of What's on Your Shelf. And today I'm coming to you from Nuria Bookstore, the store itself. So come on in, let me take you through some of the shelves. Here we have your local bestsellers. And among them, the guy we are hosting today, Silas Nyanchwani, has 3 of his books among the bestsellers, 50 Memos to Men, Sexorcised, and Man About Town. We'll get to talk to him about these books today, and he'll tell us the idea behind it. But also, on this place, we have Unplugged Jacob Aliet. We had him the last 2 weeks. Amazing guy. And one of the people we'll also be having on the show sometime very soon, Joan Thatia, whose Confessions of Nairobi Men and Nairobi Women have been among the best sellers. But this section here has Kenyan fiction. Kenyan authors who've written amazing fiction like Sinners by Sarah Halua. My friend Franz Owano, who we had on the shows some time back. Most of his books are here. Banda's War, I've seen Chrysalis, and many more. On this side, we have personal branding and finance development. Here we have people like Rina Hicks, Money Wise, Esther Mushemi's Give Me My Mountain. By the way, she is among the people who started this whole M-Pesa agency thing. I think her pay bill, her pay bill is 0001. We'll get to find out. We'll have her on the show one day. Should I? By Florence Bate. We've spoken about this book before on the show. So most of these personal branding, finance, self-help books, you'll find a wide variety. Business Conquest. We spoke to Ian Dennis a couple of weeks ago. They are also stocked here. And also now, this is the kids section. And one of my favorites from this section is this, Alana's Magical Adventure. It's written by an 11-year-old Alana Cherangat. Come check them out. Come and check. Pick some books here for your little ones. Yeah? And now to the favorite part that I love of this store is this part where we have biographies, memoirs. Here, people have put down their years of work and experience, like Joe Hamisi's Kenya's Looters and Grabbers, 54 years of corruption and plunder in the elite, 1963 to 2017. I don't know if I want to say it's an expose. Francis Ole Kaparo. By the way, there is a time that the Speaker of the National Assembly and Samuel Ole Kaparo was synonymous. You thought that you would have Kaparo wa Uganda ni nani? Many more. And also, Honorable Eden Dwellis, for the record, and actually the forward is done by the President, Dr. William Ruto. So much more. Teens Guide to the Constitution of Kenya. And I think now with this whole Gen Z conversation, these are some of the books that will really be good. And to this other side of the shelf, this is now where you have all the international bestsellers. What are you looking for? Is It Becoming? By Michelle Obama. It's here. The Ikigai. Japanese Secrets to How to Get Out of Bed. Jump out of that bed and get yourself doing something. Propaganda. We spoke extensively with Bule when we had him on propaganda. What propaganda is out there now? What can you relate to? But just a quick tour of the store. There is more than 1,300 local titles domiciled here at Nuria Bookstore. So make a point, check them out. They're here at the first floor of the Baza Plaza in the Nairobi CBD, but also you can also find them online at nuria.com. You can place your order. There's a wide range of books. And also, if they don't have a book you're looking for, I want to promise you they'll look for it. So check them out. So today's episode, we're going to be talking to Silas Nyanchwani. Among the bestsellers, local bestsellers, he's written 5 books. And we will be sitting down with him today to explore the places he's traveled to, guy from Kibera to Columbia University in the US, and back. Meet you on the other side as we speak to Silas.
Silas is a writer, a journalist, and a teacher. I've published like 5 books, a novel, a collection of short stories, 2 books for men, and my collection of like narrative essays. In my mother tongue, Gisiora is someone who starts something. Like, you know, when you're going to plant, like the person who digs like the first hole to, like someone who starts something. Yeah, they are far better storytellers in the family, but they have not written, so I'm the first one to write books. Our independence struggle is heavily associated with the Mau Mau, but we easily forget people like Tom Mboya, we easily forget the Chengo Nekos, the Kungu Karumbas, the Paul Ngays. When women start to access resources and they become rich, they also become very polygamous in nature. In Kenya, only 80,000 people earn over 100,000.
I recently learned that Kisses also played a very, very big role in the Precolonial war. I don't know if I want to call it the Mau Mau War or it was way before that, because I recently, through this interaction, I realized that actually dreadlocks, as much as sometimes we think dreadlocks came from Kingston, Jamaica, it came from Kenya, in Kusi land.
Yeah, you've actually told me that, but I know that Kisses were part of the Kenyans who resisted the colonialists when they arrived, because I think they reached in Kisii in the early 1900s, and they received a lot of resistance from Kisses, and I know about 5,000 Kisses were killed. And what the white people did is like they killed people, maimed animals, burnt stuff, and like the total loss from that was really, really huge. Yeah, but it's poorly documented. But they arrived there like around that war took place between 1905 and I think 1910, and it was led by, I think one of the key heroes is called Otenyo Nyamaterere.
Otenyo, yes.
Yeah, and he's rumored to have like killed a white man, but I later read somewhere that he actually injured the white man, called I think Northcote, but Northcote didn't die around that time. He still went on to be an administrator, I think in Bomet and Kericho area. He didn't die immediately, but I think Otenyo himself was killed, and I think his head is somewhere in a museum in London. And I think there have been some people who are asking for that head to be repatriated back to Kisii.
I think there's a part of our history that we don't talk about a lot, especially when you're looking at the pre-colonial season. When we talk about the Murima, watu wa Murima is really associated with the struggle for independence, yet there are certain communal or tribal leaders who fought.
Yeah, like of course now our independence struggle is heavily associated with the Mau Mau, but we easily forget people like Tom Mboya, we easily forget the Chengo Nekos, the Kungu Karumbas, the Paul Ngays. You know, each community had a role that they played in the colonial struggle. Even that those that collaborated and those that resisted, communities contributed differently. It's only that now the Kikuyu were highly disadvantaged because they are the ones who are like whose land was like the largest land was taken from them. So that's why like we tend to associate it more with the Mau Mau, who I think actually did an incredible job. And what most people don't know is that Mau Mau was one of the most violent resistance to the colonial rule anywhere in the world. It's only comparable to what happened in South Africa and Algeria. So people normally think that's when the Mau Mau is actually respected highly out there. Even I think the British, they created, I think the Mau Mau became like a verb in the British language back in the day, you know. because it was, I think, the most violent resistance. These are the countries like Tanzania. There was no significant war. That was earlier, like in the 1900s. Now during like the colonial, like the anti-colonial struggle in the 40s, 50s, 60s, leading to independence. Yeah, Uganda. I was in Uganda the other day, and I was trying to ask like, who are independence heroes? And I was like, no, you never fought. It was a kingdom. So like, I think they just did a transaction, and Obote was given that. But the violent struggle, the most violent, where people suffered, where people died the most, I think was in Kenya, Algeria, and then you go to South Africa. There's some bit of Zimbabwe and Zambia. Yeah.
And now coming to you, growing up in Kibera, how has that shaped the person you are today?
I was actually born in Kibera, and I grew up there up to the age of 7. And then my father died. I think I was 6. My father died, and then now I was taken to the village. Now I grew up now. I spent like between the age of 7 to almost 18, up to high school. I was in Kisii. So I grew there as a child, and then I grew up in Kisii. So I have like this kind of like mixed heritage. Like I got like the best of both worlds, like in Kibera and also in Kisii. Yeah.
How did that shape your I would say the person who now is seated with us today? What influences did?
Now I'm a Nairobian at heart, but a Nairobian who has also had the privilege of growing up in the village. So like I know our culture, I know our customs very well, because what happened, especially the millennials, those who are born in cities, you find like they were uprooted from the countryside. They don't even speak their language. You know, you've had this joke in Nairobi that nasikia lakini siwezi ongea. You know, so I don't belong to that category. I can speak Ekigusi, I can speak Swahili, English, and all that. So I have that like now triple heritage. Like you are born in a slum, and you've grown up in the countryside, and now you also now live in the city, and you've traveled the world.
Yeah. And for those who are interacting with Silas today, by the way, this guy is a journalist par excellence, and you'll get to interact with that. Did your BA in UN and your master's at the Columbia University? Take us through that because for me, I looked at this thing and I'm asking myself, from Kibera to Columbia University, this must have been such an aggressive work that happened.
It's quite a story, but it involves some bit of luck. Yeah, because I left Kibera, then went to Kisii. I started in a school. The standards were pretty low. You know, like you could be number 1. And you have like 200 marks, you know. And then unfortunately, again, my mother died, and that was now my maternal side of the family took me, and they took me to a boarding school that had better standards. And then I think now from there, now my academic journey took a different route. So I ended up in a good high school in Kisii, the best at that time, and ended up at the University of Nairobi. I started my work as a journalist, freelance with The Nation, to The Standard. Ultimately ended up in The Standard Group as a staff writer. So from The Standard Group, a colleague went to Colombia, and then we're just comparing notes, like a back and forth. Hey, have you ended up in Colombia? And she was like, no, you can also come, just apply and all that. You know, Kenya is not like the paperwork that comes with the application and all that. But I was patient enough with the process, and I applied, and I think I got lucky, and I got that Pulitzer scholarship. Yeah.
Did you always envision a career in, because now you are one of the best-selling authors, but also a journalist, practiced for quite a number of years today. Did you always envision this?
Yeah, for me it was a very deliberate choice, and because I would wish to be a doctor, because you know that's what everyone aspires, either a doctor or engineer, or a teacher. But I think I was given a thorough beating in high school, and I hated now teaching in high school. At that time, that was like the height of ambition. Like I want to teach in high school, and then the teachers beat me up, and I thought like they were being petty, and I didn't want to be in that environment.
Why were you beaten?
It was actually a very stupid reason. It was even in preps. The following day, I think we were going for midterm, And then I was angry because in this school now the food wasn't enough, and I ate quite. I have like a huge appetite. So I borrowed bread from a friend, and now the teacher's checking us from the window what you're doing. Then I just brought bread. I'm trying to eat, and then it was like, "You guys are not serious with your books." And then you were beaten and you were whipped properly. Like we were taken to a staff room, and there's like almost like 10 teachers, and each one of them is given a whip, and they're beating you up. And I'm like, this violence is rather unnecessary. So I think that kind of like killed the mood for me to be a teacher. And then though now I teach at university level. Yeah,
You still ended up there.
I still ended up there. But now when back in the day, like for you to be a doctor, you had to score either an A plane or come from a rich family so that you can afford medicine through a self-sponsorship program. So I didn't score an A, and I don't come from a very rich family. So the other natural choice for me was just to become a writer, because I love reading and I love writing. And so when I was selecting my course, the courses to do in the university, like all the 8 or whatever slots, I just put BA University of Nairobi, BA University of Nairobi, all the way down. So I didn't give JAB any option, and they just threw me there. Yeah.
But do you have any book from your shelf that represents or speaks to your early life?
I'll go with this book here, The Catcher in the Rye.
The Catcher in the Rye.
Yeah. It's an American classic. And it's about like this rebellious teen. And it best like that kid, I wish like that kid is like me, because I always had this like rebellious streak in me, but now it could not manifest itself because of the circumstances in which I grew up. But it's a book that really speaks to me, because the kid is like 16 or 17 and extremely very cynical. They're like very humorous, very cynical about life. Yeah, I consider it like one of the best books.
Society don't like rebels. How is this one of your good picks?
Society doesn't like. They like it when you conform, especially if you are a Christian society like Kenya. But I don't believe in conformity, and I've never conformed to what people normally like expect. Like I'm one of those guys. Probably I've only worn a suit maybe once in my life. Yeah, like I believe in being like a free spirit. But now, of course, now the environment and the circumstances sometimes don't give us that chance to be rebellious, and that's why now we can only like live vicariously through the lives of like the characters like Olsen Caulfield in the Catcher in the Rye.
But when you look at your life, you look at this whole journey, and I'm sure you're just giving us smaller highlights, because we would go deeper into it. But what point do you look at as was your turning point in life, looking at your entire life journey?
I think when my mother died, that was like the ultimate turning point in my life, because now I was completely uprooted from my home, and I went to live with my relatives. They did a good job. I can't complain. You were loved, provided for everything. But now that idea of growing away from your home, there's a way that it changes you. Especially if you lose your parents when you are, say, like under 15. It completely changes your life, for better or for worse. Yeah.
Very many times people underestimate the psychological burden a child has when they lose a parent, or in your case, both. But what are some of the things that when you reflect on now, you wish people knew that would make them understand this young Silas who's now an orphan?
People who have parents sometimes really don't understand the privilege. Like, a parent is like a cover for you, like it's an insurance for you, and then that insurance is taken away. It's one of those things that you have to live through it for you to understand. And unfortunately, there are those who have had parents who are not good enough or who didn't do a good job. And I've had some say even they wish they were like orphans and all that. but it's not something that I can wish upon anyone, even on my worst enemy. Like every child needs their parents, both a father and a mother, to be present. Nobody should deprive a child, not just a parent, but being a good parent. And I appreciate for the family that raised me, my guardians, like they did a proper job, not just to me, but even to their children. It's a family that you look forward to visiting, Yeah.
Yeah. But now, sticking to that note of parenting, what are you looking at as parenting when you refer to every child deserves some sort of parenting? What lens are you looking at this whole phenomenon of parenting?
I look at parenting as from the point of love. Like if you have a child, if you've taken the risk to have a child, then at the very least you have to love and provide for this child unconditionally. And I go with that story in the Bible about Jesus and the prodigal son, and that story. That kind of unconditional love towards the children, because it makes a whole lot of difference when a child grows in a loving, caring family. You don't have to be rich for you to be caring. You don't have to be rich for you to be loving. A child, basically, what they just need is just you. They don't need you to live in a mansion, to give them toys, to give them like all the fancy things that we think kids need. A child just needs you to be there, like hug them, play with them. As they grow, just offer them direction. As parents, set like a good example. It's one of the easiest jobs on earth if you embrace it. But now we live in a world where people don't want to embrace it. But if you do a good job, like loving the child, like doing everything that is expected of a parent, most people turn out right. And anytime you see someone who's like problematic, whether online or out here, you just need to ask 1 or 2 questions, and you'll find there's always a problem with the parenting. Most of the time, like 9 out of 10 times, if there's someone who's being problematic, either the parents were absent or abusive, or they didn't do a good job. But for someone who comes from like a good family, you'll be moderated, you'll have a fair balance, a fair way of looking at the world. And you won't be seeking like external validation. You won't be picking quarrels or conflicts, out there.
Yeah. And if you're joining us, this is What's on Your Shelf with me, Mulure Mike. And today we have the privilege of hosting the bestseller, Silas Nyanchwani. And we're going to be talking about his best-selling books in a minute. But now, Silas, and just to remind you that today, we're having it right inside the store. We are here at Nuria, who are partners with us at this podcast. Nuria is the leading online bookstore in Kenya today. For 4 years in a row. We've told you that in the past episodes, and we've shown you the trophies. So for all those Kenyan titles you're looking for, they're available here on the store. But you can also find them online. Check them, nuria.com, and you can place your order. They deliver countrywide and even internationally. So check them out. But also, this is brought to you in partnership with the Kenya National Library Service, who are now the official government custodians of Kenyan literature. So check them also. They have a website, knls.ac.ke, but also they have 3 main facilities, one in Upper Hill, another one in Buruburu, another one in Nakuru, and other satellite spaces across the country. So interact with them, but the best place I would send you to is their website, knls.ac.ke, and you'll experience the services. So, Silas, I want to come now to
maybe on that, and talk about Kenya National Library Service. Maybe I should also mention, like, they really shaped my life.
Kenya National Library Service shaped
a lot, yeah. Like when I was starting off, I used to camp there, like that period between high school and university. I used to camp there a lot, and I read all the magazines and all the books on my way to become like a journalist. Like I'll always hold that place in Upper Hill in a special place in my heart. Yeah.
Very good to learn about that. So please check out that place. They have a beautiful facility, even that one in Upper Hill. And I say this every day. My favorite place in that library is the kids section. they have a beautiful kids section with child experts who will take care of your child when they are there in the library. So check them out. So Silas, give me the 3 top, you've carried a couple, but what are the top 3 books that have had a significant influence on your life?
I think you can have, of course, I greatly admire Chinua Achebe, and I think like he's the greatest Africa ever had, and nobody can ever like equal him in terms of like narrating the story. And he had like in West Africa they call them like a griot. They're those people who are like naturally gifted at telling a story. I think even amongst our circles, there are those guys like when they start telling a story, you want to sit down and listen. So I'll go with Achebe, that African trilogy of Things Fall Apart, No Longer Tease, and The Art of God. I think those books are extremely very instructive. Most people go for Things Fall Apart, but I think his best book is The Art of God. Because now it was in his element now.
Yeah.
Things Fall Apart, I think, was a bit younger when he wrote it. The Art of God, I think, now it was much more mature now. Like
Tell us The Art of God in a quick summary.
Both Things Fall Apart and The Art of God tackle Nigeria pre-independence. The kind of conflicts that the Igbo community were having amongst themselves. Now, with that rude disruption of the white man coming in, and then now No Longer Tease now takes place. I think Okonkwo in No Longer Tease is the grandson of now like from the previous generation. So he's gone to London to study, and then he comes back, and now he's in Lagos. And now that thing when you go abroad to study, then you come back, you are constantly uprooted. Even so, I think Kari Baraka wrote a story about that recently. Like when you started out there, you're exposed to such high standards, but still come back here and you cannot apply them here because nobody gives a damn about them. Now you're just, like the classic is what happened to Obama's father. You've gone to Harvard, then you come here to Kenya and nobody cares about your ideas or your standards. So you sort of like become like depressed and like you sort of like the way he died. The way he died was like actually a metaphor like of what happens when you go out there and you come back and then you don't recalibrate your expectations.
Yeah.
Zikuje to how the common person here thinks. Yeah.
How do you relate to that on a personal level? Because you've also lived in the US, you've lived in quite some...
I've traveled across Europe and the US, and I think the biggest frustration for those people who have traveled and gotten the exposure, when you come back, that you realize like everything that those people have achieved out there, we can actually do them. But somehow we don't have that will and that discipline to do them. And to me, it boils down to the quality of leaders that we've always had. And my argument has always been the quality of leadership in Africa, consistent, even from the kings who used to sell us into slavery, all the way to the presidents that we've had. There have been very few or notable exceptions who really were patriotic enough or who cared enough about this continent. But whatever those guys have achieved, whether it's those good transportation systems, healthcare systems, those things with a good government, even within 5 to 10 years, we can achieve them here in Africa. There's nothing miraculous. They just do the right thing. But yeah, now when you wake up in the morning, like people have stolen money from the government, we're still at that phase of primitive accumulation of wealth. Or someone is cutting away billions and you're asking them, okay, you're wearing a watch of like 20 million, so what? Like, how does that improve the quality of your life? If you have a watch of 20 million, but people don't even have a mortuary where you come from, hospitals don't have like medical supplies, does that make you sleep a happy person? And you go back and you look at like America, for example. We can agree Trump is not like the most intellectually gifted president America has ever had. But when he talks about American issues, you can see at the very least, like he cares about them. So even like the worst leader in the West cannot make even to be the best leader like in Africa. I don't know. Like, how can I put that? Like the worst leader in America, because still in the West, would still care about their people.
Most of our people blame it on colonialism. Also take
60 years after independence, I think that's now. Of course, colonialism will always have a long-lasting impact on us and how we do our things. And also, it's not like the West has left us alone to carry our affairs. They still interfere, but it has more to do with our personal greed. Like an African leader is so easy to corrupt. It's so easy to lure. Like it's so easy. We are so cheap to buy. They can't go to Asia or to Asia and like corrupt the way they can corrupt like an African leader. So I think that's the challenge that we have. But if one day we just decide that we don't have to stay in traffic, people don't have to die like in hospitals because of lack of medication, all this back and forth at the university, like we don't have funding for universities, all those problems can be solved if you just have that will, but we don't have it.
If you're looking at every key sector, looking at the energy, looking at food security, you're looking at the financial systems, it's designed in a way that Africa will always remain at the bottom. And for example, there's one place I was reading where they're talking about, for example, Nigeria, that Chinua hails from, exports 100% of their crude oil and import 100% of the processed oils and energy needs. When you're looking at the financial systems, the loans that are easily given to Africa are in those foreign currencies, the euros, the dollars. So it keeps our government busy paying the debt.
I think that's a convenient excuse for us. Like honestly, if you just go through our budget is like 3.9 trillion. That money is enough to, half of it is normally stolen. Now that is like pure unadulterated greed from our ruling elite, because I think there is this competition for someone like to be the richest, man in Africa and all that. So that greed is the problem. It's not like we do have a problem with the how the world systems are designed, but now our individual greed now back here at home. Because you look at the amount of money that a governor, Obado, like who stole 2 billion and now is given back 200 million, has been forgiven. Can you imagine how much 2 billion can do to a county like Migori? So now we can't say Obado was influenced, like that's by design from the West. That's something say like until the day we just get to a point where we can just decide like. You don't need all these billions. Life is very short. Like the lifespan of an African man is about 62, 64. So you don't need all those billions.
You've traveled across Africa. Yeah. As a journalist, you're always the fly on the wall. What are some of the things you've seen, maybe you've reported on or you've come across in the various places you've traveled that sometimes makes you feel so much pain?
Africa is a resource-rich continent. DRC Congo is richer than America and Europe combined, resource-wise. Like if each resource from their forest to their minerals to River Congo to the people, if everything there was to be exploited, like DRC is richer than both Europe and North America. But you see, for us Africans, the way we've always used these resources, like we've always had them, like we lived in abundance. And when you live in abundance, you don't become creative, because if it's food you want, if you're a Luo, you just go to the lake and pick fish. If you are a Nilot in Sudan, like someone has like over 10,000 cows, so you'll never sleep hungry. So you don't have any incentive to work hard, and also God blessed us with a wonderful weather, so we don't have like those seasons that can make you think, maybe stock up food and become innovative. So we are an extremely resource-rich continent, and if you are to switch places, we go to Europe and the Europeans come here, within 10 years you won't believe what they can do in Africa. Yeah, but
most of our people have also traveled to those. Silas, yourself, you've lived in Europe, you've lived in the US, you've lived in those first world countries. These same people have come back to Africa. Is there a chance that our people who've seen what that efficiency, that cleanliness of the streets and the structures that are working, the infrastructure that is built to serve the populations of those countries, when we come back, what influence do we have in the leadership of the country?
Part of the reason Asian countries like Korea, Singapore, and Taiwan went to become like first world countries is because the students went to study in the West in the late 60s, 70s, and 80s, always went back. And there was that knowledge, transfer of knowledge from the West to the East. But here in Africa, when you go abroad and you come back, those ideas still, they're not going to be entertained. Because if you want to come and build a railway system within Nairobi, the matatu bosses are not going to allow that, because they're going to take food out of their mouths. In Africa, there have been some pockets of improvement where people have gone abroad, come back with some good expertise that is transferred locally. But governments have not been able to embrace this thing holistically. Even right now, when Ruto is talking about sending people abroad, you can see he's more inclined towards the remittances, the money that will be sent back. He's not talking about knowledge transfer, he's not talking about skills transfer. It's like you just go there, do whatever manual job that you can do, and send money back home. And that's what it's supposed to be. It's like when you send your best brains, if you, as a journalist, there's a day I did a story on the top KCSE students and where they are. This was around 2015. So from 1989 to 2015, that's around 25 years. Yeah. And you find like 17 of them are scattered abroad there. Of your best brains are out there. You've never given them even any single incentive for them to come back and work. And and that's why you see like the West is always getting the best from Africa. Like they'll get the best brains and they get the young people. So the best brains will go to work for the top jobs, and these are the people who go to do the many jobs. So you find now we're kind of like stagnated with people who have not traveled, who have no exposure, who don't know that actually can do things differently. So is that whoever gets to power, they don't give people who have been out there that chance to implement whatever that they have observed out there. Yeah.
And if at all you're hearing some noise, we are right in the middle of CBD. There is so much activity going on. So I beg your pardon if you hear some sound that you're not familiar with. There are a lot of vehicles. There is a construction going on right behind us. There is a lot of people who are happy down the street. So that will not hinder us from having this beautiful conversation. So Silas, moving from that to your next one is which one?
I consider this to be the greatest African novel.
Concubine is the greatest African
The Concubine, yeah, to me, people normally, Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe is collectively agreed upon as the greatest African novel and one of the greatest novels in the world. But I always go with The Concubine because The Concubine is set in not just Precolonial Africa, that Africa that is completely untouched by a white man. like it's the Africa of myths, is the Africa of gods, is the Africa of dance, song and dance, So, and then Elechi Amadi did a terrific job in writing. Like the book is extremely very lyrical, the writing is very tight, like it's unmatched. It was a set book in Kenya in the late 90s, the mid, I think around 94, 95, 96 there.
Tell us about this one.
The book is about a woman called, is it Iwoma or Iwoma? I don't know, it's normally pronounced Iwoma. She's a wife of a sea god, but now I think she rebels, and then the sea god releases her to the world, but then swears that any man who will ever touch her will die. So she's married, the husband dies from a stupid fight, and these other men who are orbiting around her, you just come close to her. As soon as you get familiar to her, you just die like a stupid death, like maybe a lizard bites you, or an arrow, something like you die like a very funny death. It was like this thing they talk about, like the red thigh woman. I don't know, in central Kenya, like women with red thighs. If any man who comes into contact with them, you marry them, you die. So I think it's the same concept, yeah. And a lot of good lessons to derive from the book about masculinity, the traditional African society. Yeah, like I love it.
When somebody reads the title concubine, the concubine on the street means the other lady.
The other lady, yeah.
How is it related?
So a woman now, the husband dies, like when the book starts, the husband is involved in a fight, and then he dies. So I think she was a concubine of the sea god, one of the concubines of the sea god. If my recollection is right about the book, she was one of the concubines of the sea god who was sent to she's like a human being, but she's a goddess from the sea, and that's when Bodu comes in contact with her, dies. Especially the three men or the four. Is it there's Ekweme, Emenike, Madumandu. I think there's another third guy. I think those three, they die. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So she was a concubine to the sea god.
Yeah, the sea god had like many wives, and I think she was the favorite, and then she rebelled. Yeah.
I'm trying to. I don't know if I want to say I'm struggling with the thought, or I'm just imagining. From you're also a pro-masculinity crusader, and there is the issue of polygamy, and the issue of a concubine. What's your take on polygamy?
If a man can afford it and he has a frame and is responsible enough, sure enough, you can go about it. But what I know, we normally say that it's men who are polygamous. That's a lie. It's women who are polygamous.
Women are polygamous?
Yeah. Monogamy came to rescue men, not women. The only incentive a woman has to be monogamous is if a man is rich and she wants to protect that wealth. But women have always had that dual mating strategy. They need
enlighten us.
They need you normally call it like alpha facts, beta bucks. Like women want the strongest genes they can get. Like if they are to be allowed to pick the men they would want to date or marry, they'll only go for the 20% of the men at the top. Like women are willing to share the 20% of the men at the top. And the other men, 80%, they are left to scramble for the few men who are remaining. So how it works, we normally conflate the ambitions or the desires of the men at the top to be the desires of the rest of the men. But most men can't handle more than two women. They don't have the frame, they don't have the resources. So we can beat our chest that, polygamy, but not men have the frame or even the strength to deal with the two women. And that's you find like most polygamous families are so messed up, and you can solely blame the men.
My paternal grandfather had 2 wives. My maternal grandfather had 5 wives. And I lived with an uncle who had 3 wives. I would say the men sort of were managing these families.
But I'm sure the grandfather did better than your uncle, right?
At this stage, it's hard for me to say who did better. But even the uncle, to date, he's passed on, but that family is still there.
Then he had a good frame. If you have a good frame and you have resources, because
so the key part is resource.
What has troubled polygamy in the last 2 or 3 decades is the diminishing resources. My maternal grandfather had like 3 wives, and all of them, I think, he did well because there was land, so there was no point of conflict. So like polygamy got messy when the resources started to dwindle. But in the past, it was like unachukua bibi, then unampea shamba, so they have no reason to fight. And that's what I was saying, like it was only a small percentage of men who always had that privilege to be polygamous. You move across, you'll find that most men were either they never married, or they only had 1 wife. But now, look right now the mess that we're in. I don't know that called the mess. You find out women now, when women start to access resources and they become rich, they also become very polygamous in nature. I don't know whether you've noticed that. Like in the past, it used to be like it's men who are cheating, but right now we are at par. If men are cheating, if male cheating is at 40%, women are also at 40%, because they also can access resources. They don't have to be chained, because what normally chains a woman to a man 90% of the time is resources. But now they have their own resources, which means they can have multiple partners. Yeah. So when you talk about polygamy, especially in an environment like the one we exist in, men are slightly disadvantaged. Unless like you are in the top quartile, you are either rich or you are talented, or you have like some exceptional looks or some exceptional talents that a woman would like. But if you're just an ordinary Joe out here, then you can't beat your chest like you are a polygamous by nature. It doesn't work that way.
What's your take? What do you think about this concubine and polygamy conversation? Give us your thoughts on the comment section. Today we have the privilege of sitting with Silas Nyanchwani, who's authored 5 books. We'll be talking about his books in the next few minutes. And this is not by design, it's just a coincidence that last week we had Jacob Aliet, who we spoke to for the last 2 weeks, and he's written extensively on masculinity. And today we have Silas. This had been planned way before, so it's nothing to do with pro or against, but these are people who've written reflections about our society. And he has a style that we will talk about extensively today, that he watches around and writes. So whatever he's written, as he says, are things he's seen from around his environment. And those are the things that most of us have bought. That's why he's having bestsellers. But what's your take on this whole phenomenon of polygamy? Are you from a polygamous family? What would you say? What would you say? How has it influenced you and the decisions you make? Is it something that you support, or you don't, or you're somewhere in between? You don't know. There are aspects of it that you like, there are aspects of it that you don't like. Tell us on the comment section. We'll be happy to share your thoughts and feedback in and on this show as they come. So finally, one of the Kenyan authors I admire, I would say I admire his writing, is also among your top picks, Binyavanga. Tell us about this one.
This is a collection of his writings. By the time he's dying, he only had his memoir, One Day I'll Write About This. And that short story that won the Kane Prize in 2002. So by the time he's dying, I think he was working on a novel. I interviewed him, I think, in 2012, and he told me that he was working on a novel. Unfortunately, it never came out. So I think the editor of this, Akal, I don't know, Prabala, collected now his writings from the newspapers, the journals, whatever that they were printed, and he collected them into this book. And it's the best of Binyavanga's writing. It was very good with satire, very good. There's some short stories there, some very good essays, non-fiction, and some bit of fiction. I think there are some 2 or 3 short stories there. So for someone who wants to know how good Binyavanga was, this is a book that can easily introduce you to his works. Because I think he's the best Kenyan writer of the last 20 years. Yeah. He was the best Kenyan writer of the last 20 years.
What stands out to you on Binyavanga's works?
Binyavanga was real. His writing was very poetic, very immediate, because he had this style of writing in present continuous tense. So it's like he's walking with you, like when you read that story, the Discovering Home. It's like he's taking you through the bush. He's going with you to. It starts with the party scene, then he takes you to Uganda, takes you to Kitui. Like he almost made me go to Kitui to go and eat the Kitui goats. The way he writes, and he's very intelligent also in the way like his thought process is extremely very intelligent, very observant, and like he can't miss a thing. And also he has that like satirical eye of looking at life, and he was like a larger than life figure. So I was extremely, incredibly, very talented, and also his sentences, they just dance on the page. Those short sentences, 1-word sentences, extremely good, extremely superb.
When you look at these books here, how would you say they've influenced your writing?
I think I like Achebe the way that he owns the story, the authority with which he narrates. He's like really like a grandfather. And I think like he wrote Things Fall Apart. Achebe is born, I think, in 1930. He's like 28 when he's writing Things Fall Apart. I try to imagine like where did he get all that authority to write like a sage, like an old man, Achebe, like there's so much wisdom in his books. The Concubine also, I love the book more because of the writing style that is there, and also that ability to crystallize a story from pre-colonial Africa and tell it in a way that is entertaining, even for someone now in post-colonial Africa that you can enjoy, and even like he paints the picture of how that life was back in the day. And of course for Binyavanga, post-colonial stuff, postmodernism. So Binyavanga is like the present. And they open now the door for us now to write about ourselves, to write about this city, to write about our country, So all these, the Maina Kagenis, all these Saraluas, and all these books that are being written now, I think he's the one who started us. Like he gave us that freedom. Now you can write as you please. Because back in the day, it used to be like, oh, you have to think like Achebe, write like Amadi. The thinking was like very close-minded, But now Binyavanga like liberated us from that kind of like gatekeeping. So because with the Kwani, anybody, even a poet, a spoken word artist, a musician, all of us now collectively, we could now start enjoying and appreciate literature in all its multifaceted varieties. Yeah.
Which now is the best way to introduce us to your works? Silas, you've written 5 titles so far.
Yeah.
Take us through them and just a quick snippet of what is each of them, from the first perhaps to your latest.
So this was my first published book, Sexorcised, and it's a novel about a man who has been divorced and how he's going through the motions of divorce. He's sleeping with multiple women to deal with the effects of divorce. And the book tries to explore the psychology of a man who has been divorced, what goes through his mind, because that is one of the things that is almost always unexamined. We always talk about divorce from the female point of view, and men don't talk about divorce. If as a man you are divorced, you'll probably just quietly, at least now these people are talking, but in the past, you'll just take the L, and you'll find the women are talking, but men never used to talk. So the book is it's fiction completely, and it's a sort of a middle-aged, middle-class Kisi man who has been divorced. And then I did.
No, just before you transition to that one, when you look at this, what was your hope? What did you desire your reader to pick from this one?
Honestly, this book was very incidental in the way it came to life. As I've told this story several times, I was teaching a class, a master class in creative writing at the Creatives Garage in Allingham. And then I was teaching these students how to write powerful introductions. There are different types of introductions. You can do a disgusting one, a shocking one, you know. So I wrote the introduction of this book, and it's a bit profane and pornographic, and I couldn't share it with the students. But I felt like, I'm not going to write this introduction. I'm going to write a blog about a one-night stand. So then I sat on it, like, it's one of those things that as a writer, you just have it somewhere in the recess of your mind that you'll ever work on it. Then one day I sit to work on it. Then I ran into an assistant county commissioner, a former classmate, and he told me he was handling, those people like the DOs, He was handling a case, a child custody case, where this woman had sued, I think, a pilot and an engineer about child custody, and then they had gone for a DNA, and I think, they got one of them discovered the child disease, so the other one was being played by this woman. And I was like, in my introduction, it's a divorced man. Why is he being divorced now? I have like what you call a key. So I was like, instead of writing a blog, why not like just make it maybe a novel or something? So I just wrote it for fun, and I wasn't supposed to release it. One of the things you just write for fun, and then, but my editor told me that it's actually a good book, you can just release it. So when I released it, and it had this extraordinary reception, and like even in my wildest dreams, and because I released the book, it came out with many errors, editorial, typographical, but within at least like around, actually today's on September 15th, around this time 4 years ago, within that September, the first 1,000 copies had gone. So the book was just marketed through word of mouth. It went viral and viral and viral. By December of that year, I'd already done like 3 reprints. So the demand kept on soaring and soaring. And people love the story because it's very Kenyan. It's very Nairobian. Like anybody who reads the story can relate with everything in the book.
Which part? The sex part? The divorce part?
The sex, the divorce, I wanted to do that proper Nairobian.
So the intro is still pornographic.
It's still pornographic. I actually thought like maybe Kenyans would resist the book.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that we had grown to a point that people now can just read such kind of book, because I can assure you, nobody had written such a profane book until I did.
What would you say this book has told you about who we are as a people?
Kenyans, I don't like calling us like pretentious, but we still have that Christianity, like it's deeply ingrained in us, and it's sort of like it's a nature that we constantly fight. We don't have that freedom to be who we are. We sort of like tend to shy away from it. And remember, like A Man of the People by Chinua Achebe was banned because there's a scene there where someone sleeps with a woman and comes with a condom that has whatever the sperms in
So
it.
you know what? It was banned.
Yeah, it was banned in.
I did it as a set book in high school.
Yeah, do you know why it was discontinued? It was prematurely discontinued. It was to be done from 203, 204, 205, 206, to 207, but prematurely the Catholic Church caused ruckus. So there is that duality we have whereby...
I did a Man of the People and Q,
Yeah.
which to me were the same thing.
Yeah, but you
Just
see,
one
Q wasn't overly dirty. It had seductive scenes and all that. But among the people, only that single scene that caused the Catholic Church to bring those problems.
Yeah.
You remember, like when you in Uganda a few years back, they normally have this tabloid newspaper called Red Pepper. It was the most widely read newspaper. So people used to buy the Red Pepper, but people are shy from reading it. So you buy the Red Pepper and then you buy the Monitor. So you insert the Red Pepper inside the Monitor. So someone thinks that you're reading the Monitor, but inside
you think you're reading news.
Reading the CD and raunchy stuff, naughty stuff, you know.
Yeah.
So, but I think if you notice, like now Kenya is writing more about sex, quite openly, freely, and that's how this book
What
came
is
to
the
thrive.
downside of that?
The downside of that is that people can easily dwell on sex because it's an easy topic. You can see, like, we've had our radio programs, like in the last 20 years, FM stations, they're constantly talking about relationship sex. So in such an environment, then it becomes very difficult to have other conversations. It's actually for the first time the Gen Z demos that managed to push even the radios now to start having real conversations. And now the Gen Z, they took away that and they started doing it on Twitter. You know, we had a Twitter spaces having even up to 2 million people tuned in. Yeah. Because now we spend so much time on sex, relationship, marriage. Until now, we never had time to talk about serious stuff.
As a parent, the sex thing is one of the biggest and scariest conversations I think most parents.
Yeah,
imagine.
Parents are worried what their daughters are uploading and what their sons are downloading. You know, there is always that dilemma, like, what is my daughter up to? What is my son up to?
How do we balance this thing? Because when people talk about sex education, when people talk about sexuality, is there a part of it that is good? Is there a part of it that... What is it? How do we approach this whole...
I think for me is to try and protect your child or children from negative exposure. You ensure that the phones that they're using, like you are up to date with what they're doing, and at the right time, starting from the age of 8 onwards, start having those layered conversations. Like, if someone is young, tell them nobody should touch them. If they are touched, they should be able to report. At a certain age, you can start now introducing sex. You know, you just go step by step by
What do
step.
you mean introducing sex?
The sex talk, rather, like
The sex
like
talk.
the sex talk.
Jeez,
Yeah.
And that now,
Yeah.
you say, now guys, today,
Like, you know, as they grow, of course, right now they have so much access with the phones and everything.
Yes.
They can learn this
and that
on
is
their
my
own.
other worry.
But as a parent, you have to be acutely aware that what is it that they are downloading, who are their friends. You know, sometimes you can be a very good parent, but you have this young boy, he's a teenager, he lives alone, he's not monitored. So maybe he's even started watching pornography, you know, and maybe he's exposing your child to that. So you must be your child's friend so that you can know what they are up to, so that they don't have to hide anything from you.
What's your take on pornography?
It's terrible. It's terrible. Like, someone can easily get addicted to it. And as Jordan Peterson normally says, there's something extremely demeaning when, as an adult, you're watching two adults participate in a sexual act and you're not part of it, and you're watching it in a screen. There's something extremely demeaning. It lowers your self-esteem, and it's like an evil thing. It shouldn't exist. That's my take.
Tell me, what do you think about it? Then from Sexorcised, we'll talk. We'll still come back to this because I'm sure it's going to inform some of the conversations we'll have later in this conversation.
From Sexorcised, I did 50 Memos to Men.
50 Memos to
This
Men.
one started as I started this series on Facebook called Memos to Men. From my desk. I call my desk the desk of National Welfare Desk for Men. And I did around 60 memos, and people kept asking me like, oh, there's a memo you wrote about something. I would like to read it. And then I realized I can't keep on going back to look for the memo to send to people. So I said like I can collect it into a book. So if you want to read all the memos in one go, then you can have them in a book. So there's volume 1 and there's volume 2 and there's volume 3 coming. The last of the memos, because cumulatively I did about slightly over 200 memos. Yeah. So they tackle stuff to do with divorce, relationships, money, marriage, your life with women, your life as a man, your life in marriage, all those things.
What was the thought behind doing the memos?
So I used to do a column in the Standard. The Standard have this tablet called the Nairobian. So I used to have a column there called the Retrosexual, that I used to write stuff for men or about men. In 2019, I retired the column and I said, like, I'm done. I just want to concentrate on books. And then COVID came. And even before COVID, I remember our economy started collapsing in 2015. So men are being laid off. And once you're laid off, the first casualty is your marriage. Like if you're sacked today and you don't get a job within a month or 2 or 3, then your marriage is at stake. 90% of men who lose a job and they don't get a job back quick enough, and their wife is working or is better off than them, they easily end up divorced. Among other factors. Then COVID comes and now men and women are forced to live together during the curfew. There's domestic violence. Men are being divorced. Men are being depressed. Men are committing suicide. And guys now, based on my previous column, kept asking me like, Silas, niko na hii shida, what should I do? And then I realized that actually, even if I retired that column, in the newspaper, I wasn't serious enough because I was a bit satirical. I could joke. It was more like a humor thing. I said, like, actually, men deserve to be told some of these truths that I know. And then I just started writing the memos. Yeah. So I read like memo 1, 2, 3. Before I knew it, I'd gone all the way to 200.
Memo number 31. Raise your standards. Attract high-quality women to your life. Never, ever. There is one you've written here. Down that memo you read, never, ever allow a woman to say that she made you. How do you attract quality women?
So, you know, what in the dating market, women normally oversell and overvalue themselves. And men undervalue and undersell themselves. Like women are very good at marketing themselves. That's why they'll go buy the best outfits, they'll do their makeup. Like they spend a fortune in cosmetics because they know it's business. Now, for men, on the other hand, we don't understand the business dynamic of this thing. So you find as a man, you don't want to improve on yourself, you don't want to groom yourself, you don't want to, like, we don't invest in ourselves enough. So when you don't invest in ourselves enough, women are constantly looking for the top. They only want to associate with the top dogs. They don't just go for anyone. So if you don't improve yourself, then you'll never have access to the women that you desire. And then now, because men normally undersell themselves, they end up picking what you call low-value women. Because you don't know your worth. Because I've seen men who are extremely very rich, intelligent, gifted, and you see them ending up with women. They're like, oh, boss, you can do better. And they just lack that awareness that with they can just buy some good colognes, learn to tell a good joke, and, you know, be confident. And, you know, I'll teach men these things, how to have game, you know, how to get a woman to be interested in you. So most men don't know those things. And this memo is all about that.
Is it always a competition? Is it a...
It's called the sexual marketplace. A woman is not going to sleep with you because you're just a man, you have to prove your worth. That's why we talk about hypergamy. A woman, because they carry the womb, and when they sleep with you, potentially she can get a baby, and she doesn't to get a baby with another loser. She wants to get a baby, the best genes, the man who can protect, provide for the child, and all that. So that's why they are very selective for a reason. It's not like there's anything wrong with that, because the womb is an extremely very big responsibility. Mtoto si mchezo kulea. So they have to be extremely very selective with whom they sleep. Yeah.
Somebody reviewed these 50 memos. She's a lady called Esther Wavinya on Facebook, says, Kenyan men are becoming victims of gender. Really? This is 2024, not 1924. Instead of crying foul because women are surpassing them, men should focus on personal growth and adaptability. The so-called dwindling opportunities. I think there is a place you mentioned that the opportunities for the men are dwindling. Yeah. The dwindling opportunities the author mentioned sounds like an excuse for resisting change. Newsflash. We are in a world where earning more and climbing the ladder isn't a man's exclusive right anymore.
Yeah, she's right. And actually, there are over 200 memos, and we are telling men to up their game. So I don't think whether she read all the memos. Maybe I think she just picked one, and because all this red pill, the manosphere and everything, we are constantly telling men to improve themselves. But I've gone a step further to explain to men why we are here where we are. It's because the world has changed significantly over the years. From a time when men used to work in factories, you realize we no longer have like factories around. All the works, we have shipped them to China. Even when we're building these roads, China, we even import labor from China, we import the tools and everything. And the environment around the world, not just in Kenya, the job opportunities that have been created the last 40 years, they tend to favor women. It's not their fault that that's how the world is set up right now. We might go into a phase where we have to start building smart cities for climate change, and then now men are going to be more involved and women can be disadvantaged easily. So for me, I don't like looking at it as a male versus female thing, because I really think that we do actually need each other. We thrive best when we're working in complementary fashion. But it's only that what has happened in the last 50 years is that the way we relate with women is very utilitarian. Women want that utility, like you can provide, protect, and everything that a man is supposed to do for her. And as a man, you also have some expectations from her. But now what has happened is that for provision, a woman can provide for herself. For protection, a woman can be protected by the government. She doesn't need a man to protect her, So everything that a man can do for a woman, she can do for herself. And for some strange reason, men, we like replacing ourselves. We even invented sex toys. So we are at a point, even like a woman, unless maybe she wants a child, she can actually buy sex, she can get sex toys, like a man has become replaceable. On the other hand, as men, we still expect our women to do those traditional things, like maybe serve your own meal, arrange the home for you, but they're also working. So that's like now the point of departure and conflict, whereby women can replace men and can outsource their traditional role of a wife, like kama ni nguo zako, she can give a house help. Like the house help now has taken that role of the traditional wife. Now, as a man, when you marry and you have those traditional expectations, and both of you are working class, you'll constantly feel like you're not getting the most out of your wife. Not because you want her to be like a domestic laborer, but there is that nurturing role. The way that she'd expect you to protect her, there's also that nurturing role that you expect from her.
So does it mean that if we are both working, the gender roles dissolve?
They shouldn't dissolve. There's still people in functional marriages where the woman still does that they still do that nurturing role, but it tends to end with with children. For a man, for you to be cared for you to be nurtured by your wife, the standards have to be so high. But if you're just an ordinary block like this, you're not going to get any kind of like the best you can get out of your, unless she was born and raised well. But what you tend to notice in most millennial, college educated, city living men is that from your wife the only thing ni mtoto mmezaa naye, everything else ni mbocha anafanya. Even sex you'll struggle to get from her, you know. So that's when apart, like now marriages have become so most people are so dissatisfied. Like as a man, ukiwa na dem yani unaona like there's nothing she's doing for you, and women also have the same feeling. So that there's that kind of like standoff now we have between men and women. Yeah.
But when you look at it from your writing, you've been a journalist, you've written extensively on masculinity. But what are the challenges that men and boys are facing in today's contemporary
We have
society?
a problem of identity. Remember in Kenya, by the time a woman is 45, she's a single mother, either divorced, widowed, or she has never married. 50%. So it means half of the men you see around, they don't have fathers or father figures. And that normally causes them a lot of problems down the line, because for men, unlike women, our identity is tied to our fathers. It's an inescapable reality for most men. Like you need to know who your father was, so that you can have those roots, whether you come from Kikuyu, Kamba, and all that. Like you have to know where those roots are. So when you're rootless, you tend to be very restless as an adult. Like now, when you're here, because it used to be like even when you have like a conflict with your wife, you run home, like you go home to your roots and chill, cool your heels. But for now you're in the city, you don't even have a place to go. Your father didn't leave like a very strong imprint in you, so that because your father if you have a good father, they'll give you that sense of like a true north. You'll know when you've tripped, how to self-correct yourself, out-parent yourself. You'll be moderated, you know. So that's why you find like men now have these problems like addictions. They don't know how to handle them. This kind of erratic behavior, the kind of like lack of social discipline. You see that a lot, eh? And then there's also like the lack of ambition, but that's also tied because male ambition is best emanates from like you have a family to push you. You know, you have a wife and kids to make you work harder. So when you don't have a wife or a child, then now you have to reinvent another purpose. So we are in that phase where now men have to start, in the event the family doesn't work, that family thing is not working, then you can rush to reinvent another purpose for yourself. So that's why these memos are coming in. Yeah.
What has caused the dwindling opportunities for men?
As I said, it's because the way the capitalism is structured around the world. Capital will always go where there's cheap labor. And for the last 20 or so years, China has been like the world factory. So most countries, like if you go to Australia right now, I think we've lost over 50% of the factories that were there. Because now it's cheaper to import stuff from China than to kung'ang'ana hapa na Kenya Power and Kenya Power's taxes and all that. So because men were used to hands-on jobs, those jobs have been taken away from us. You know, at the same time, you look at the education opportunities. Women are, especially in America right now, women have surpassed men in terms of college attendance and even graduation. When you look at the list, it's almost 60 to 40 now, 60 to 40%. 60 women, 40 women for every 100 people are graduating. People graduated from 2015 onwards. There are no clear jobs, more than half of them. There are no factories or industries to absorb them. We don't have like farms where they can go work, agriculture, all those sectors that used to absorb men in the past. They are completely stalled, or, you know, because it's easier now for these politicians to import sugar or to import maize than to be patient enough for people in Western Kenya to work on those sugar mills and like those maize farmers in Kitale. Like, we've killed all that, so men don't have opportunities. On the other hand, when you look at the corporate sector tends to favor women, because women are, their personalities, they are agreeable, they are cooperative. It's easier now for them to thrive under such an environment. Yeah. So it boils down to those personal traits and all that.
Someone was arguing that, especially in Kenya, the last 20 or so years, the girl child empowerment programs have elevated the woman and shunned the boy child. What's your take?
The boy child has not been shunned. That's something that we constantly get wrong. Nobody shunned the boy child. When you're doing those affirmative actions, like when Kibaki came, he propped up ICT, real estate, higher education, media, banking. Those are sectors that women are likely to thrive. Economic growth coincided with the creation of an environment where women can thrive. For men, now, another thing you need to know, that when women, most women that is, when they can provide for themselves, the need for a man or marriage becomes superfluous. It's something they can do only when they have to do it. Others, they don't have to do it, because for the longest time, for most women, marriage was a means of economic survival. But if she can survive on her own, then it means now she has to look for a man who's like above her. But in Kenya, only 80,000 people earn over 100,000. Only 80,000 people earn over 100,000. So if you're a woman who's earning like 70,000 shillings, where are you going to get a man? So that frustration, where
that's a
fact.
Factual
just Google,
stats. 80,000.
Only 80,000 people earn more than 100,000. That's now from formal employment. Maybe there's another 100,000 who make as much from business and all that. But the numbers, they're quite low. So even like now, working class women, they're extremely...
Sherehe watu wanapiga huku na loan ama...
Kwani sherehe watu wangapi wanapiga? Nairobi has 6 million people. So usiingie kuiva 2-3 udhani ati kuna sherehe inaendelea. Nairobi has 6 million people.
Wow.
Yeah. So,
but let me ask you, Silas, do you think the man has grown weaker? Because think about, I don't know about you, but me, I met a man expecting love when I came to Nairobi. Me ni mtu wa kukuja, by the way. Down there, you're eating, you have clothes, you live somewhere. That's love. And I don't think it's supposed to be communicated. You should see it. Tunakupenda, tumekulipia shule, tumekununulia nguo, na unaishi, kuna mabati, there is a roof on top of your head.
The problem we've had, what we're talking about love, and it's very Victorian. This concept of weddings, romance and everything, something that started in Europe like barely 200 or so years ago. And then it seeped into our culture. And you notice that all this nonsense started under the Kibaki government, because now people are having money, like jobs. When you left college, you're leaving college with a 6-figure and you're only 25. With that kind of money and you're young and you've been watching soap operas while in campus, it's very easy to buy into that idea of love. Because ordinarily, men are the romantics. Women have no, we used to think like it's women who love the flowers, women who love to be pampered and all that. But it's men who love idealistically. Women have always been very pragmatic. A woman only loves something you have to offer. It can be a looks, it can be money, it can be something that she fancies at that very time. And the moment she'll grow out of love with that thing, she's out. But you see, for a man, you'll find that you are heavily invested. Just go and listen to all the love songs that have been written. For every 10 love songs, 9 are done by men, and women only do only one love song. Just go do your own research. It's men who love. Because for us, we have a way of idealizing and elevating women.
You hail from the church, Silas.
Yeah.
How do you reflect on it religiously when you're looking at these gender roles and all these debates we're having? What is it?
The church, there's a memo actually, I think memo 23 or 24, where I talk about the problem the church has right now. The church preaches submission, that a man love your wife and they submit. But submission is contingent to provision. Where there's no provision, there's no submission. And that's what now the church now doesn't know how to handle. Because now you have all these high working class women, like they're earning so much. How are you going to teach that woman to submit? Yeah? Because at a certain level, there are no men beyond there. Like in Kenya, once as a woman is earning more than 100,000, you've locked out 99.999% of the men that you can marry, unless you decide to marry down. But as a woman, if you are to stick with your ambition of marrying up, once you have 100,000 on your paycheck, you've locked out. So it's going to be a struggle always.
Silas, there is a dynamic where women marry, I don't know if I want to say down or marry that person.
That's like an exception to the exception, not the rule, not even an exception to the rule. It's the exception to the exception. Under rare unless maybe she has like a low self-esteem or she was well raised but it rarely lasts. Like for a man, the first assurance you have to give a woman is that you'll provide. And then now you can be all these other things, loving, romantic, caring, and all that. If you're all those other things and you can't provide, unless you're a master manipulator, it's not going to take place. Being a woman is very expensive. It's not an easy thing. Bearing children is very expensive. Children have to be taken to hospital. Yeah? Children have to go to school. She needs money for her nails, for her hair. Yeah? She needs money to buy parts and everything. So, you're not going to feed nothing. So that's why, like, for a man, you have to have that frame and provide for her. Like, there's no shortcut about it. So where there's no provision, there's no submission. Period. Like, so that's why now the church is really facing that very big challenge. Like, how do you solve this economic crisis? And then how now do you now update the Bible to accept this reality? Because we are the first generation of men to deal with an empowered woman. Us, millennials, we are the first generation to deal with women who are our equals. Like, you are going to school together, going to college together, employed together. We're the first. And there's no handbook for that.
People refer to you as the bishop in the church of masculinity.
Yeah.
What Bible do you use?
The normal Christian Bible.
What lessons do you draw from it that now inform who your typical man should be, or what should this man look like?
Oh, the Bible is a beautiful book for men. Everything you can learn as a man to be a man is in the Bible. And you just need to look at all the patriarchs or all the stories from Adam listening to his wife and tripping. There's a lesson to learn there. You go to Noah, and I took care of his family until they got into the ark. You go to Abraham, like all those men in the Bible, all their strengths and weaknesses, there's something as a man you can learn from them. Especially someone like Samson and what he had with Delilah. Yeah, like the Bible is such and even if you read it not as a divine book of instruction, you just read it as a story. The Bible is just wonderful. And there's so much that men can learn from the Bible. Yeah.
Silas, a man about town.
So after I wrote Sexorcised, I spent more time writing the memos. But now the memos are like, they're formulaic. I didn't have room to express my creativity because the memos were like sermons. They were a bit urgent, so there's no room for you to start playing around with the language. So I wanted to write a book because, funny enough, I didn't want people to necessarily associate me with the memos. This was just a periodic thing, like let's help men when you can. But now Man About Town reflects more of who Nyanchwani is. So if you read the two books, there's some bit of conflict because everything I'm telling men to do here, maybe I'm doing the exact opposite in Man About Town. But it's because for the memos, I'm like a doctor. Like I'm like that old uncle or a doctor. Like I'm prescribing what you need to do. But it's me living my life. So it's a collection of 14 original stories, and I added, I think, another 18 or so from my blog and other collection of writings from Facebook and other spaces. So it has like stories that touch on my life as a bachelor, partying, observing people on our dates, riding a bus in Nairobi, on being dumped. Like it's a very personal book. It's me and how I have related with women, the women I've dated. Yeah.
Why does he want to sue the young women he has dated?
Because online, sometimes as an older guy, we are ashamed that, if you're dating someone in their 20s, that's cradle snatching. And I've gone out with younger women and I feel like they know more than I do and they have taken advantage of me.
I don't want to get into that now that your first book was pornography. So anyway,
Yeah.
Silas. So then Man About Town is ideally centered around you.
It's around my life as a bachelor. It's the realest book. Like now that if you people speculated a lot. They thought like maybe the main character in Sexorcised, it's me. But like I've always insisted, everything about Sexorcised is like fiction, except for the name of places. But this book, like it's me now keeping it real.
Yeah. What is the core part of this book that you feel like forms the spine of what message you want to communicate?
The book is what I've been trying to achieve with Sexorcised, and the book that I write in the future is I feel like the middle class is not represented in like in our literature. We tend to focus more on poverty. Like this has to be like something about poverty, about a woman, about like those cliche things. So I wanted this to be like a book for us millennials. Most people are reading it like they're laughing along, like, hey, this sounds like something I've observed. It's me taking you to a club and you're observing what's going on there. You're riding with me on a bus and I'm telling you the various peculiar things that you'll observe in a bus. So the book, like, it's a very Kenyan book, and it's also like a periodic book in the 2010s. Like this is how Kenya looked like between 2010 to 2020. So if the book will survive, maybe you're reading it in 2060, it will tell you how Nairobi looked like around that time.
But I learned that style of writing is called Flaneur.
Yeah, like that. You just fly on the wall, observing people and all that. Yeah, it's a French. It originated in France.
Yeah,
that kind of like sitting and observing and just describing stuff as you see them. Yeah.
Why did you take that risk? Because it's not a very popular style of writing down here.
It's been there.
Yeah.
It's been there
because I can see this, and then I can relate it to Joan's. Also, the confessions, those confessions.
Yeah. It's I think that is where the world is right now. Even our comedy, when you see it, people are always doing that observational comedy. When you watch Crazy Kenna, all this Demolem say, and all these guys who are doing comedy on social media, all of them you can see just based on situational things like what are people doing in the clubs. If you're at home and with your girlfriend and then your other girlfriend is coming over, how do you navigate that kind of stuff? So it's us now reflecting back to the society, the kind of stuff that you're able to observe. all of us observe these things and we maybe talk about them, but maybe don't have the creativity to package them to make people now see. Because some lady read this book and she was like, "Hii Nairobi mi sijui," you know. So for me now I've succeeded to paint to her a certain picture that she had never known. Now there are people who just live some very closeted lifestyle, so they don't know the other side of Nairobi. So the idea is now to expose people to the multiple kind of lifestyle that exist in Nairobi. Because I think there's still more to explore that people don't know. And when talk about people think that, are you making up stuff? But no, we're not making up stuff. Yeah.
So now you have 2 other books.
Yeah, I do have like a collection of short stories, but we don't have them here. Birthday, breakup, and other stories.
Yeah.
Those were my earlier short stories when I started in my 20s. I think half of them were published to the nations East African. And then the rest had not yet been published. So I thought, like, rather than the stories go to waste, let me just collect them. At least they reflect for those guys who might want to read me in the future and see how I grew as a writer. They can see where I started, because those were done from 2013-14 there. Yeah.
I landed on a sea of your writing. There is a blog you have.
Yeah, Nyanchwani at WordPress. Yeah.
Yes.
That is where like I used to hone my skills every day. Like every week I used to do a blog from 2010 up to almost 2017-18 when I stopped now blogging regular.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's extensive.
Yeah, it has a lot of material.
Check it out.
It's just Nyanchwani.wordpress.
Nyanchwani.wordpress.
Yeah.
It almost distracted me from.
It was at its peak the peak was between I think 2012 and 2014 and 15, around 15 there. Yeah. Sure.
Yeah. But now when you look at this journey you've had as a journalist, then into blogging, and now into books. Now you're doing books that people are buying actually. What lessons would you say you've drawn from this journey?
I think I've learned, like, if you really believe in yourself and you work hard at it, that's something, and you put in the job, you put in the work. As they say, like, you do your 10,000 hours, you can easily get there. You can, because initially I set out to do a novel in 2007. But 2007, nobody was reading novels in Kenya. There aren't even Kenyan novels being written at that time. So it took me almost 13 years for me to get the first novel out. So it has taught me to work hard, to believe in myself more, and to believe in Kenya, like, actually we can build our creative industry to a point where we can have, like, we can be selling thousands of novels, we can make good movies. Like, it has given me that sense of, like, belief in us because Kenya is a very strange country. We are very patriotic and very unpatriotic. So on one hand, like, you go to YouTube, you find, like, there are Kenyan songs, like, with over 40 million views, and you're like, why can't Otile Brown fill Nyayo Stadium and perform? Like, why can't Sanaipei, like, I keep on asking myself that. So you find, like, we are writing books, singers are buying. So I'm really looking forward to a point where now we can start now, like, appreciate, like, so now we are, at the moment I think it's only athletics where we are really invested in it. But I really want a time where, like, a Kenyan writer can feel like KCC, I'm looking forward to a point where, like, a Kenyan musician can feel like a old stadium, like Nyayo Stadium. That's something that I hope we'll achieve in the coming. And Gen Z have given me that hope, because I think that they are the most patriotic generation in Kenya.
I don't know. When Silas is speaking about us embracing our writing, I don't know what's your take. If you attended the Makondo Festival, Nuria was the resident bookstore in that festival. What's your take? What was your observation during that festival? Feel free to share with us on the comment section and also on our social media platforms. We are available at What's on Your Shelf on all our social media platforms. We're on TikTok, we are on Instagram, and here on YouTube, where you're currently watching this broadcast. But Silas, you've lived in very many parts of the world, but you've come back to Kenya.
Yeah.
People talk about greener pastures. Why did you come back?
For me, I've always believed in Kenya, and my heart is really in this country. And there's so much potential, as much as like we squandered it with the Jubilee and now the KK government. I do still believe in the immense potential of this country. And I came back for my family to invest in my startup. Yeah. For me, I'm not the kind of guy who can really survive and thrive outside there. For traveling, working, and coming back, well, but for living there and settling is a bit of a challenge.
But what are some of the places you've traveled to that created very good memories for you?
I loved Germany. It's an extremely very organized country. Punctuality, like it's very serene and very peaceful. I loved rural South Sudan, where I spent some time. I've loved Uganda a lot. Been to Uganda and I've loved the place. And of course, in America, I loved New York. New York is a strangely big, wonderful, and unique city. Like there's no other place in the world like New York. It's an old, dirty. I don't know, like it's hard to describe the magical nature of New York. But it's extremely very expensive. So to be there, you really have to know how to survive and make that money. Yeah, people barely can afford rents there. So normally, like they split, like you have to share a house with someone else, often with a stranger sometimes. Yeah.
But when you look at New York and look at Nairobi on one hand, and with the lens of the topic you've spoken about most, masculinity, how do you compare the two spaces?
America and Kenya are comparable in terms of the masculinity spaces because both countries are very capitalist in nature. And, Kenya borrows a lot from America. And what most people don't know is that after independence, actually I learned this from Macondo Festival last year, after independence, because of what we did with the British, they denied us opportunities like scholarships for people to go and study. Sort of like deliberately, walifinya kabisa. But in the meantime, Mboya airlifts to America, Obama, Ngari Madhae. So when they came back, that's how Kenya fell in love with America. And then you realize, like, in Africa, Kenya is actually one of the countries that is grossly obsessed with America. So because of that capitalism, of course, in the Cold War, we started with America and all that. So the effects of capitalism in any society tend to bring that huge gender divide. So that's why we find, like, this thing, talk about manosphere, red pill and all that, it's thriving in America and in Kenya. Those are the two countries, and maybe some bit of South Africa, kidogo, Zimbabwe, kidogo, but Kenya and America are leading that. But it's because of that, the way their societies is set up. The women are empowered there. What has happened to men, the diminishing economic opportunities that have created that kind of rift. The only difference is that now we are in Africa, and that the West now, the problems they're going through, they went through them in the 70s when women joined the workplace en masse. So, yeah, in Kenya now, the problem they're dealing with now, walianza, they started in the 70s. But now they have caught up with now technology, social media, and all these other things. But more or less is the same problem about dating, marriage, and all that. This thing talk about like men going their own way, the incel culture, and all that. Those things that increasingly become very prevalent in Kenya, as they are in America.
Is there a book that has had a significant impact on you in your thinking or your thought processes in this topic of masculinity, other than your books?
There's a rare book I have in my desk by Walter Trobish, I think, Walter Trobish. was a German preacher who worked in Africa in the late 70s, and I think it ended in 79. So he wrote this book called The Misunderstood Man. Of course, when he wrote it in the 70s, it captures the masculinity problems of the 70s, but it's still relevant today. But I liked how he arranged that book, The Misunderstood Man. So the first part, he talks about how men are seen. You're either like a rude guy, a rebel, and he has like 7 archetypes of men. He listed them, and then he lists like 7 problems that men deal with, and how men respond to the problems, and how they should respond to them when they are healed. Because it's like every other man out here, all of us have like some wounds, whether it's parental, you've been divorced, something that happened that injured you. So either you become very cold, or you become very violent, you become playful, like these people are just joking around, but they're hiding a lot of trauma. And then he discusses how men try to handle the 7 problems they deal with. Some become very cold, some become inapproachable. So he layered all those, and then now in the final part, which unfortunately died before he finished. So the wife, who probably knew his thought process, tried to finish from his notes, but it's not as well done as the first 2 parts. But the final part now talks about like how you can heal yourself as a man, so that you can be a loving, caring, courageous person. So the book is called The Misunderstood Man by Walter Trowbridge.
How important is friendship to a man?
2 things. As a man, you need family and friendship. 2 sets of family. Your family, like your wife and your kids, you need them, and you have to be in the best books with them. But in the event you're not blessed in that regard, it doesn't work very well, then you need your family, like your siblings, your father, your parents, and you have to be in good books with all those people, because of the fragility of our fragility as we grow old. Sometimes you think like you're going to be young forever, then suddenly you are in your 50s, and maybe you have a lifestyle condition, and you need people to help you around. So that's why you need to have the 2 families.
Doesn't that counter blood is thicker than water?
What?
Where you have this nuclear family first.
No, I'm just giving you the layers, and then now you need friends, good friends, quality friends, people who can be like your pallbearers, or you can be their pallbearers when they'll die. It's people who can stand by you. It's people who have values, shared values. It's people, they're not trying to seduce your wife or your sister. People have standards, so all men need some quality friends, not just friends, quality friends. Yeah. I normally with my friends, we normally joke that we look at friendship like it's an army. So there are those who will be like lieutenants, servicemen, and then there are those like you promote to the rank of a general. Like, so when you have like your friend who's a general to you, it's someone that you can die with or you can die for. Yeah. So friendship is extremely very important, because they'll keep you in check, they'll help you when you're down, and you can always have those good times, like, enjoying some bottle of whiskey, beating stories, because you're social animals. Yeah.
So if you would add a book to all the shelves in the world, which would be this book?
I don't know if I say the Bible, it might sound a bit cliche, but I think the Bible is the best book that encompasses every story that touches on humanity and how we have lived and how we can live. Or if you can just pluck, is it Ecclesiastes from the Bible, and I'll put that on all. every homestead, if not the whole Bible, then at least that part of the
The
Bible.
book of Ecclesiastes.
Yeah.
Why? What is it about Ecclesiastes that stands out for
You
you?
know, when wise old Solomon says like all is vanity, it's actually all is vanity. And you have to make peace with that fact that all is vanity. And then now you can start living against that bitter fact that after all these things we're doing, we're going to drop dead. So once you process that, because Solomon experienced everything, he had like 700 concubines, married no 300 wives. You know, he lived large. He owned like everything a man could own. And then at the end of the day, just realized that all these things, they are it's just nonsense. So once you make peace with that, you don't have to steal billions of money. You don't have to do this kind of idiotic thing that we see these politicians running around with these chase cars, that kind of excessive lifestyle. You don't have like to pose naked on Instagram. These weird things people do to get that validation and all that. Once you make peace with that, then you'll live the most contented life you'll ever live.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would you have an instance in your life that you can relate to that?
Yeah, because I've had opportunities where like I lived in abundance, like I had what I can consider was enough. And I've had moments where I was completely very broke. And I learned, like I made peace with it. There are people like the moment they go broke, depression kills them. There are people, if they suddenly become rich, they can't handle the wealth kills them.
Yeah.
So you must learn to balance all these things. So the reason I value that book of Ecclesiastes is because it's philosophy. It is philosophy simplified, where they say there's nothing new under the sun. And it's really like that. Sometimes you feel like, because you have phones here, there's technology, there's AI. These things have been there in one way or another, But all of them, they just disappeared, So that's why I'll go with that book, the Bible or that specific book. Yeah.
If there is a young man who is watching you today, what book would you recommend and why?
I would recommend him to start with the memos we have written, because we have tried to contextualize what's really happening in Kenya. And locally, I'd also recommend Jacob Aliet, Unplugged. I think he's done a good job, because most of these things men were not aware. Our fathers knew them, but they didn't have the language. There's probably an uncle who look at a wife you want to marry, akwambia hapo, but he does not have the language akwambia why you can't do that, So for us, we've gotten that language now to explain to people, this is what is happening. So they can start locally with I think myself and Jacob, we've done a good job at least to put them in book format.
Yeah.
And now we can start recommending them for other books on masculinity. But now the problem with the books on masculinity, there are so many demographics. There's no one size that fits all. So you have to know where you exist in the whole spectrum of masculinity.
Yeah.
You have to understand, you have to be self-aware that are you an alpha, you are beta, you are sigma, you are simple. You have to know all those so that you know what kind of message you are picking. Because sometimes when you write these things, it's us projecting maybe our insecurities, follies, and stupidity, and then you want to embrace it all scale. So you have to have that discerning spirit to know what we think will work for you and what will not work for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, because in some cases, like you'll find other men in this space, they're telling young men to spin plates. Spin plates basically means a sleep around. Maybe you're not cut for that.
Yeah.
And you're not able to do it. So do you necessarily accept that and believe that? No, not at all. So pick what works for you.
Yeah. And it's interesting that you've mentioned that, because Jacob was our guest last week, and we had him for 2 weeks, spoke about a wide range of topics from masculinity. And I think for me, what stood out for me mostly is his vast research on the topics of masculinity, religion, and science. But for a chance for you to win Jacob Aliet's Unplugged, tell us today, what was Silas' first book that we spoke about today? For a chance to win Jacob Elliott's Unplugged, what was Silas's first book that we spoke about? The first answer on the comment section gets our book of the week. So Silas, as we conclude, what are you currently working on? What are you looking forward to?
I'm releasing, in a month's time, I'm releasing the last volume of Memos. So there are still 100 unreleased memos, but because some of them are repetitive and maybe I've shared them in one version or another in the previous two volumes, I've just handpicked, I've selected some memos that I think are very key to the message that I've been trying to put across. So that book comes out in a month's time. I do have some memos for women as well. They'll come out in due course. And there's a book that I've sat on for the last 3 years that is now, they're not really memos, but it's me having a conversation with my nephews. It's sort of like an uncle, I'll call it like a Sunday afternoon drink with Uncle Silas. It's me now having a drink with my nephew, just telling him about the realities of life.
Is there any writing you will do for the women?
Yeah, there are memos for women. Now, writing for women is a bit tricky because if you write something that they don't agree with, they can slaughter you. So I'm trying to see I can write in language that is agreeable enough. Yeah.
But now, Silas, if somebody wants to find you, how can they find you? Where do they find your works?
For the works, they can always buy with Nuria. Nuria is basically, I think, my exclusive supplier of my books. And they can come to me directly through social media. I'm always on social media on Facebook, Silas Gisiora Nyanchwani. On Twitter, it's Nyanchwani. Instagram, it's Nyanchwani. Thread, it's Nyanchwani. Or even by mail, it's Nyanchwani@gmail. I'm constantly available and very responsive.
Thank you so much. And that is where we close the current today. And remember, we asked your question earlier for a chance for you to win Jacob Elliott's book, which has been recommended by Silas, by the way, who's written amazingly. And he's also selling, he's one of the bestsellers at Nuria with his Sexorcised. Not recommended for persons below age of 18, by the way. Is it for 18 and above? Or 21? Or 24?
I'll prefer 25.
Yeah. So for a chance for you to win Jacob Elliott's, we are giving out Jacob Elliott's because he donated 5 books for viewers and fans of What's on Your Shelf. So for your chance to win Jacob Elliott's Unplugged, tell us, which is Silas's first book that we spoke about? And I'll give you a hint, as he has said, for 21 and above. This marks the end of our conversation today. Remember, this What's on Your Shelf is brought to you courtesy of our partnership with the Nuria Bookstore, which is the leading bookstore in Kenya today, stocking more than 1,300 local titles. And that does not mean that they don't stock up international bestsellers. So you'll find all the books you need here. They're available on a physical shop on the first floor of Baza Plaza. Check them out. Baza Plaza is right in the Nairobi CBD. But also you can find them online on nuria.com. Place your order. They deliver globally, not just nationwide. But I heard that Nairobi, same day, outside Nairobi, the following day, globally. Now that one we will have to check with who is bringing the book to you, but you will get it. Remember also, we are also in partnership with the Kenya National Library Service, which Silas speaks highly about and says this space allowed him to travel in literature, in magazines, by the way. And most of the time when we talk about the library, we always think about the physical shelves and the books, which is there, but they also have a very beautiful online platform. Check out VTabu, which is also available online. You can check it out, but they have a very beautiful space where you can go, sit, read for the whole day affordably. You'll be shocked at how much it is going to cost you. They have an ample parking, so you can go park there, go into the library, You can also have your library dates with your kids. They have a beautiful kids section where experts will take care of your child and guide them through their reading for that day. They also have very good auditoriums. So for those people who want to launch their books, you want to launch your products, check it out. You will like it. I have been your host, Mulure Mike. Thank you for journeying with me to the very end. Have you liked? Have you subscribed? Until the next one, have a good one.